Hello everyone, welcome to BFD. If you are not here for BFD and you're having interesting conversations, those conversations should happen outside.
Okay, it's 5 after. Welcome to BFD. We'll get started. This is the note well. Every one of you is bound by it. Please be familiar with it if you're not already. So quick status. We're going to be covering 3 drafts today: BFD for VXLAN, the BFD fast authentication mechanism, and also status from the BFD Yang group. So the first order of business, Nobo, please stand up and wave hi. Everybody thank Nobo for his work. And also please thank Rashad for stepping up to do the new chair work. Nobo's done a great amount of work for us, and I think that Rashad will do just as wonderful of a job. So document status, as usual, the wiki is current. So this is what the chairs believe the status of things are. One of the items of interest to the working group in general is the fact that we do have BFD stuff that is done outside of BFD. So if you notice something that is not on that list, please let us know. Part of our charter is to sort of help other groups review the use of BFD in their mechanisms. Other status is that the 5084 considerations document is in the RFC editor queue and should pop out sometime soon. Thank you everyone for working on that one. The SBFD documents are waiting for editorial work from the area director that we've received from the area director. Nobo unfortunately was unable to take care of the outstanding items. Santosh Palagati has actually stepped up to take the editor pen for this to allow us to get this through. We have one open issue that we should discuss about that. So one of the bits of feedback that Alvaro had given us as part of the review of the document set is, we have a use case document, and as IETF process to that point had largely suggested, we did the use case document as a internet draft. Sometimes use case documents, etc., get published. Sometimes they don't. We actually have been having a general conversation across the IETF, and this did show up in the routing area meeting in terms of what do we do about use case documents long term. We have been given the option by Alvaro to actually publish this if we want to. So if we do decide to do that, we do have some comments that need to be addressed before we're willing to publish it as an RFC. The biggest question is, what does the working group think? We have actually proceeded through working group last call. We addressed all the comments from the working group. Those comments are, I think, reasonable and pretty easy to address. The real question is, do you want this published as an RFC? And this is the point where we take a sense of the room. If you could, do you think that we want to actually publish this? And we'll ask the opposite question as well. Do you think we should not publish this? So basically, two people have an opinion one way or the other. I think my personal inclination would be that we'll extend the authors one last opportunity to see, do you actually want to publish this? But the sense of the working group, I think, is that this is not critical work that actually should be enshrined in an RFC. So we'll offer them one more opportunity for that, and if they decide not to take us up on that opportunity, we will allow the document to lapse. But that said, people that worked on this document did sacrifice a lot of their time for IETF process to allow us to make progress in SBFD. Please let them know that their work is appreciated. So in terms of working group last calls, there have been two that have been ongoing for a little over a month now. One is for the BFD multi-point drafts, including the base document and the active tail. There's also the BFD MPLS MIB. We have received 0 comments to date about progressing these documents. This means a couple of things. Either everybody here is incredibly busy, which is entirely possible. It might mean that you don't think we should actually progress them, or it means that you simply don't care. We do actually require consensus from the working group to move these things forward. For a MIB, I can actually believe that the majority of this room does not care. MIBs are sort of on the way out within IETF. We may do this one to completion just simply as a way of closing off some remaining work. But I find it a little bit difficult to believe that there is no interest in multi-point in the room here. So again, to get a sense of the room, have you read at some point the BFD multi-point document? Yeah, and we actually have, for the people that are active in the group, done it. So of you who have read this document, do you think it's ready to progress? And let's call that roughly about 2/3 of the same people, I think, in the minutes. So my request to you is, if you've read it and think it's ready to move forward, please just say so on the mailing list. Let us get a sense of that so that we can say that we have consensus here. We have also started last call along with Trill, since Trill is one of the first users that are publicly including that as a normative reference. Loa.
So yeah, Loa Anderson. I'm in the situation, if you ask, have you read the draft? No, I haven't, but I read the first one. And I think that's pretty good shape. So I wouldn't object if you actually progressed that one. I can't say anything about the other.
Okay. Now, on the offhand chance that Loa's situation is the same for anybody else, is there anybody who has read the first document but not the second one, and you would prefer to see them advance independently?
I can say independent. I say can't really talk about the other.
Yeah, but it's really sort of the same question. They're really tightly bound items together, but we can progress the first one independent of the second one, just simply because we would have no down refs to worry about in that case. But we didn't see anybody showing hands, so again, I think the sense is that we probably do want to continue to progress these things together. And similar for the BFD MPLS MIB, I'm going to ask and not have huge hopes. Has anybody here in the room read this document? The MIB. Wow, one person's read it. That's actually one more than I was expecting. So though I guess the question is, do you think it should progress?
Yeah.
Okay. And the MIB doctor review was the next step after we actually decided to progress in the working group. So we're seeing about as much support for the MIB as I would expect. So in terms of interesting work happening elsewhere in IETF4-BFD, in the routing working group, we do actually have some efforts to use BFD for VRRP. The sort of motivating new case these days is to some extent data centers. VRRP is becoming very popular as a host level failover mechanism, but people's VRRP implementations don't have timers that keep up, whereas their BFD implementations can. You're encouraged to take a look at this work inside of RTGWG and supply feedback to the authors. So we're going to proceed with the BFD for VXLAN as our first presentation. It looks like Greg is presenting. Yep.
Okay, so I'm presenting on behalf of offers, and this is update to the document we presented in Prague. What addresses it? It's use cases that OEM between virtual machines, fault localization, and service node reachability. Currently, we're considering use case for point-to-point BFD, and point-to-multipoint BFD is for further study. We had a pretty extensive discussion among offers because currently in VXLAN does not have explicit case for multicast. But at the same time, so it does mention that VXLAN will have bump traffic, and bump traffic implicitly assumes the multicast. So thus, there might be use case for point-to-multipoint BFD, and that's one of the reasons I support the progressing the point-to-multipoint BFD proposal here, because it gives us a solid foundation and reference. Next slide, please. So this is the just schematics of the deployment scenario when you have layer 3 underlay and hypervisors, and their BFD session is between the hypervisors. Next. And as in VXLAN, you have inner MAC header and inner IP header. So outer IP header will be terminated, will be decapsulated at VTAP. And here's the listing of what information is needed. We are not yet discussed whether there will be a well-known MAC and how it will be allocated. Could be probably allocated from IANA managed range of multicast MAC addresses, but on unrelated discussion, we had concern expressed of use of multicast MAC addresses in VXLAN environment in data center. And that is not only the case here, but a case for VRRP and point-to-multipoint BFD. Demultiplexing will be done using source IP address for the bootstrap, and from then on it will be done based on your discriminator. In case of point-to-multipoint BFD, then their update to the demultiplexing of point-to-multipoint BFD session as per current proposal will be applicable. And the TTL will be set to 1. Next slide. So BFD packets expected to be exchanged between VTAPs, and one BFD session can be used to monitor multiplicity of VMs and the BFD packets not to be forwarded to VM. And the current proposal is to use VNI of 0 for that. So upon reception of the BFD packet, the inner MAC is well known, or it's a learned MAC address of this VTAP, and VNI set to 0 will prevent from forwarding these BFD packets to VMs. The reverse path will be over IP network, or there might be extension to LSP ping, so that to direct reverse path over another VXLAN overlay connection, and thus save some BFD sessions to monitor them. So the next step that we are considering is that we appreciate comments from the working group, and we'll be asking the working group for adoption, but it will be at NVO3. Thank you.
So you're not intending this to be adopted in BFD. Okay, that's one thing. One thing that did come up on the mailing list was a little bit of concern over multicast activity for this. Did you want to comment on that in the room?
Yes, I mentioned it briefly. I think it's a generic problem for use of multicast addresses in a DC environment. And so yes, we discussed it, applicability of point-to-point BFD to VRP. And VRP itself uses multicast well-known MAC address, so it has this problem inherently. So I think that it's a generic problem, I agree, and we just need to find the right group to discuss it.
Okay. And certainly one of the problems that the multicast will cause in this context, like VRP is mostly a slow protocol. You don't tend to run it with very, very fast timers, even though you can. Whereas with BFD, you tend to, and we sort of have the other impact that I understand the main use case of this is, sort of coming from the outside world from, the devices, basically many sessions potentially crossing the same pipe.
Yes, actually, so Jeff is well aware that this discussion came when there was a proposal to use point-to-point to multi-point BFD to have faster convergence of VRP. But it is because VRPv3 does allow us to do sub-second intervals, so its timers can be quite aggressive. So that a dangerous behavior will be exhibited by VRP itself.
And are you presenting this in NVO3 as well this afternoon?
Yes.
Okay, good.
So next session.
Okay, great.
Okay. Yes, Shah from the Vary Broadcom. So Greg, one question. Do you intend these BFD packets when it's generated, let's say from VTEP1 going to VTEP2, in VTEP1 and in VTEP2, they go through the VXLAN processing? Basically VXLAN forwarding. So what I'm asking is this kind of like an upmap style BFD forwarding, or is it like a downmap? Yeah, because I think it should be something like an upmap, because if it is like a downmap, then you could actually run it on the outer.
Yeah, I agree. It should be viewed as an upmap.
Upmap.
So, but again, because it's inside the box.
Because you want no.
Because it's inside the box, it's basically what we are wanting is that we want to prevent it from being flooded into the DC.
Oh yeah, that
right. That's clear. Everything else we cannot say must because we cannot verify.
Yeah, but I think the intent, at least you can say
yes,
your intent
absolutely.
is to go through VLAN forwarding because that's what you want to test. VXLAN forwarding because that's what you want to test.
Yeah. If we struggled somewhat to get good normative language around it, so if you can help, we'll appreciate it.
Wim Hendricks, Alcatel-Lucent. The reason I have a question with respect to the detection of the BFD packet itself. There are some proposals in VXLAN to add an OEM bit as part of the VXLAN header. And
Actually,
did you consider that or not?
It's a very good idea. I'm very much for having OEM as a protocol type within new encapsulations. So it's not only for BFD, but for any type of OEM to have OEM tools to have their OEM protocol as explicit protocol type in encapsulation header.
Right. So if that would become available, you would adopt that as part of this draft?
Yes, then definitely we'll look at how then encapsulation will look like, because currently we are discussing IP-UDP, BFD encapsulation, but then it might be possible to use ACH encapsulation too.
Right, thanks.
Ilya Vershkov, Mellanox. A question is about you select VNI 0. Does it address ECMP cases when you have this, let's say, several tunnels between two VTEPs that's cross different?
Actually, that's to Wim's question. So if we to have OEM protocol, then ECMP of overlay will be benign. So it will be non-issue.
Okay, so the question is, so this BFD, what is going to test? Is test the two VTEPs alive
there is very good philosophical question, because in IP OEM there is a problem of ensuring that you're in band with your traffic. If you do ECMP on a 5 tuple, so if you're in a tunnel, then at least on the forward way, you're guaranteed that you're in band. How to monitor all available ECMP paths, that is something of a black magic. And for example, of 15884 that is coming update, we clarify, for example, for LSP BFD, you can do to have multiple BFD sessions to the same target FAC, and then you can probably use different source IP port numbers to try to address different ECMP paths. But there is no guarantee what you're monitoring and which session monitors what. So ECMP is, yes, it's very tricky thing, and
but as I understand, it's a general case for DC, so somehow.
Yeah. But if you have any suggestions or just want to discuss it with us, you're welcome. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Jeff Erickson. So I think in its current incarnation, it clearly used to detect health of receiver node. It cannot be used to detect path failure. And probably in order to follow data path, you would need to use same UDP source numbers to ensure your entropy follows your data plane.
And that is, I think that if we have OEM protocol type, and then we can use ACH encapsulation, so they will be not subject to hashing based on BFD IP UDP header. So then we'll follow it, and at least we'll follow the particular the same tunnel. But I agree that BFD is more of continuity check rather than connectivity verification. Yeah.
So, question for the room. Show of hands, who's actually read this document? Let's call it 7 or 8. So, since you're looking for adoption in VO3, and you obviously have a good set of probably the same interested parties that will show up the same there.
Hopefully,
my recommendation is go ahead and work with these people and see what you can do to actually refine it, especially in terms of the in-band versus the encapsulated versus the raw format. Since I suspect that's probably going to be your biggest issue aside from multicast.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next presentation is going to be on optimizing BFD authentication.
Right. Hi, everyone. I'm Ashish Mishra. I'm presenting on behalf of Mahesh for optimization of BFD authentication. We had our first presentation a couple of meetings ago. There was some feedback that came through it. I'll go over a quick overview of what the idea was first, and then the couple of changes we've made to the draft. The problem with BFD authentication for most implementations is that it's very computationally intensive. Having to check the authentication on each and every BFD frame. It limits the scale. Also, the cryptos available in 5884 are no longer secure, or at least soon won't be secure. The solution is to authenticate only a subset of the BFD frames. All state changes will be authenticated, and only a small subset of the BFD CC up frames will be authenticated. Can you go to the next slide? Now, what this does is it significantly reduces the amount of cryptanalysis we need to do, and reduces the amount of system load that authentication puts on the BFD engine. Also, it allows us to use stronger hashing algorithms. So that's good. Slide. Now, for the changes from the first version, there was a comment that we had not properly mapped out exactly what state changes and what transitions are going to be authenticated. So here's a cool little map that shows all transitions that are going to use authentication. The ones that are not going to use authentication will use a null authentication TLV, and that's what we are proposing. We can change it a little bit if necessary. The null authentication TLV, for people who are familiar with the stability draft that we had proposed, has no authentication, but has a sequence number and a timestamp. The timestamp here is irrelevant. But the sequence number is something that we are going to need to maintain proper authentication across the BFD state transitions that we are authenticating. Also, if you notice, the up to up transition is going to use a null authentication generally, but we must allow configuration to periodically authenticate the CC ups to completely prevent man-in-the-middle attacks over a long period of time. Next slide, please. Here's the null authentication TLV that we propose to use here. It's compatible, as I mentioned, with the stability draft and maintains sequence number to prevent replay and man-in-the-middle. And the last slide. That's pretty much all the changes we made. At this point, we welcome questions, comments, and we propose to adopt this as a working group document.
So, show of hands, who has read this document? That's actually pretty darn good. So my request to you is a couple of things. Given the specific nature of this being security, see if you can find somebody that's willing to help you do the audit to make sure that state transitions all make sense. I suspect that up may have a sub-state hiding in there in terms of the periodic replay. You have it in there anyway, but it's just a matter of actually documenting it. Is sometimes it'd be null, sometimes it should be not null. Beyond that, have you sought out any review from the security group yet at this point?
Not at this time. We wanted to make sure BFD is in sync before we enter security review.
Okay. So of the people who have read the document, how many of you think this is actually ready for adoption? This is not to say it's done. It just means that it's part of the group. Okay. 2, 3.
Sorry, I have a question. Yes, Sharon, the very Broadcom. Yeah, I agree you should have the authentication for all the state changes, but how about any changes to the BFD packet? It means, even rate changes or anything.
So if we go back to the map, poll is part of the state change. So the rate change will be affected by the poll.
Okay.
Okay.
So
and-
for all rate changes, the poll is required?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, then.
So Shahram, knowing what you work on, are you actually happy with this in terms of being able to support the crypto load with this mechanism? Show yes. So we'll take the adoption call to the mailing list. One final question to the room. How many operators are actually present in the room right now? You operate an actual network. I see at least 3. Of you 3, how many of you actually deploy some sort of BFD authentication at this point in time? I see 2. That's actually 2 more than I was expecting. The motivation for that question is we were doing the original security work moving towards RFC a few years ago. It was sort of shown that authentication was not a feature that people had been interested in. So this is actual change. Now we have people that are now using authentication. Second thing of interest, and this maybe I should find the link and send it off to the mailing list. There was a nice article from the crypto research group within the IETF showing some sort of disturbing statistics about how SHA-1 is, the end of life is even closer than we were expecting. So there is a lot of motivation to start using the stronger crypto where available. Obviously, the biggest problem had been that we can't do crypto at line rate 4 barely with no SHA-1. No SHA-2 was probably not reasonable in the current form. And this proposal is really our only step forward to be able to allow this to be a deployable feature. So my request to the working group is, please lend your eyes to reviewing this. And as I mentioned, we'll take the poll to the working list.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
I have a question for the operators. When you say you use authentication, is it for specific flavors of BFD or is it for all flavors of BFD? Single hop, multi-hop, I'm sorry? Just single hop? Who was the other operator? I forget.
Yeah, I think it's just single hop. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. And our last slide set will be on BFD Yang update.
Hi, good morning. My name is Rashad. I'm going to be presenting the BFD Yang model. Okay, so this is a bit of history of recent history on the BFD Yang model. It was adopted as a workgroup doc after Prague. So the Rev 4 of the individual contribution document became workgroup doc. The current document is VRF centric. After Dallas, we went on the wave of augmenting routing protocol, routing instances, and all that. And the current doc has single hop support, multi-hop support, TE, LDP, and lag. Currently, in that doc, the IP single hop configuration, we have a grouping which we recommend routing applications should include in their own Yang model to configure BFD. We have had discussions with people from the OSPF group on this. That's the current state of the document. Next slide, please. What's not in the document, we do not have any VCCV. There's no MPLS-TP right now. 5884-BIS is not supported. We need to change the key to add a discriminator in there. We don't have any RPCs, so I think there were some ideas suggested as to what we would need RPCs for BFD. So if you have any suggestions on this. And seamless BFD. I think initially we had left seamless BFD out because it's not in RFC yet, but it's getting closer, so we might decide to tackle that. Next slide. Okay, so here are some of the issues we think exist in the current draft. So the first point is that being VRF centric is great if all your services are routing based, but in the case of MPLS-TP, you could have a layer 2 lag. There's absolutely, there's no VRF. The second issue, which is probably one of the biggest issues, is we've been going back and forth between do we configure BFD intervals for single hop in the routing application? Do we configure it centralized in BFD? There's various implementations out there which do one, the other, or kind of a hybrid model where some stuff is in the routing application and some stuff is actually in BFD. The problem with what we have right now is you have the basic parameters being the intervals and the multiplier, which are exported via a grouping to the routing applications, which, for example, OSPF uses. But the authentication parameters, which are really BFD specific, they end up in the BFD model. So the config is split between two different places. And the last point here is, well, what we have for operational model for MPLS-TE is per tunnel, and it should really be per LSP. When you have multiple LSPs in a tunnel, you could have different states. So we've had some discussions with the MPLS group, and we're supposed to have some more this week. Next slide. So here are some solutions the design team has been looking into. So the first one regarding for the technologies which are not IP-based is, instead of augmenting the routing protocol, we basically add a reference to the VRF when we need to have a reference to it. So have a leaf ref. For the issue of split config, we're having discussions as to putting all the BFD configuration in BFD, as opposed to having requirements on routing applications to use the groupings from BFD. The one question there is, one discussion we've been having is certain implementations today, they have BFD configuration under the routing protocol, let's say OSPF and ISIS, and as opposed to sharing the BFD session, they have the ability to have different BFD session for those different routing applications. So to support that, we were looking at ways to support that in the base model, but we haven't found a way to do that which would work for implementations which don't support that. So our current proposal is, with the centralized BFD configuration, is for implementations which have that special behavior, they would need to augment the base model. But I mean, this is something which is not closed yet. It's discussions which are ongoing. And regarding the last problem, so we discuss importing some LSP stuff from the TE model. The TE team has asked us to look into augmenting the MPLS LSP operational model. So discussions ongoing on this also. But those are the three main points which we have to solve in the immediate future. Next slide, please. So assuming we do the changes I just mentioned, so here it's the full BFD configuration. This is for single hop where you have, interface, destination address, etc. You see the list is keyed by interface and destination address, and everything is inside BFD, nothing in the application as we have in the currently published draft. Next slide, please. This is for multi-hop. So previously, when we were augmenting the routing protocol, so we didn't need to put a VRF in there because it was part of the context. So if you can see the line with VRF there, that's something which we've added, which would be added if we stop augmenting the routing protocol. Next. So a couple of questions. I mean, the BFD overlag is a bit of a tricky one since, I mean, there is the RFC to support BFD overlag, but the lag Yang model, as far as I know, is not an IETF Yang model. So
it's an IETF spec, though.
It is an IETF spec?
BFD and lag NCRs.
Okay. Looks like I got my answer. Okay, so last thing regarding Lime. So we've been having lots of ongoing discussions also with the Lime team. Yesterday I did a presentation in the Lime work group. And what Lime is kind of mandating us right now is to use their generic Yang model for all technologies, all OEM tools. And we're finding it hard to make a CFM-like model fit into what we need for BFD. So for that too, there's ongoing discussions. They're talking about doing things more flexible so that it would fit what BFD needs, but that's also in the next episode. So, and I think this is it. Any questions?
Les Ginsberg. So I'm just curious, in the case where an implementation, you said, has different sessions for different clients to the same neighbor,
Yes.
what is I guess this is a question to the working group in general. What is the value add? Is this something that the working group thinks we actually need to support? Because if we don't, then you've solved your modeling problem, or you simplified the solution to the modeling problem.
I don't know what's the motivation for that behavior. I can definitely check with members of the design team who might be able to answer that.
Greg Mirsky Erickson. I see their use for multi-hub BFD, and as for MPLS BFD 1584, there might be a use case if you want to cover ECMP, so to the same target FAC. But for their single hub BFD, I agree that I don't see any.
But even for 5884, it would be the same. I mean, you have multiple BFD sessions. Each session is going in a different path, but it's still the same.
It is presumably goes over different path of within the same LSP. So if you have IP MPLS and you have ECMP, then you can have multiple paths for the same LSP, so that you can play the trick with your source port number, which you control at their ingress. So to trying to hit their ACMP, if you know, like you have 5 available paths, you can allocate 5 different source port numbers. Hopefully that your IP UDP encapsulation of BFD will force it over the different paths. So that's where it might be something interesting. But again, to me, it's a black magic.
Mahesh Chetanandani, Cisco Systems. So I don't know if your point was just to MPLS, or in general you were asking the question with respect to routing protocols that are running between 2 endpoints.
So I think my question is simply in the context, if you look at BFD as a service and you have multiple clients, and it turns out multiple clients are asking for the same service, why would you certainly you might have to look at the parameters that have been requested and work out the lowest common denominator, so to speak, but I don't see why running 2 sessions makes any sense.
The only thing I can think of is if one application, let's say, if you say, T, for example, you're doing fast reroute and you're saying, I need 15 milliseconds. And, IGP say, well, if you got a really small failure, like, which lasts less than 500 milliseconds, maybe I don't care. Maybe I don't want to go and do my fast convergence and all. That's the only thing I can think of, but I'm speculating here.
So Jeff has, if I can jump into the mic line, one application, which you sort of hinted at, is that if you have a application that needs a really tight granularity, fast timers, and another application that is lazier and needs less granular timers, you have an interesting design question in front of you, whether you choose the more aggressive or the less aggressive timers as the common session if you reduce it to a single session. If you do the less aggressive one, you are doing a disservice to the one that needs the tighter timers. So typically what most implementations do is they choose the most aggressive timer set and the less aggressive is along for the ride. There's a problem with this though. When the more aggressive session goes down because of transient loss of connectivity, you want the application that needs that to be able to take down the session because it's receiving the edge trigger of the down event is happening. But the less aggressive application is also getting it down, despite the fact that had it been on a less aggressive timer set, it could have lived with it. Now, unfortunately, one of the design practicalities we tend to actually see out of BFD implementations, especially the hardware-based ones, is we're session limited. So we're trying to have as few sessions as possible, and therefore we don't really deal with the situation of a single shared session with aggressive timers needing to basically downgrade itself. You know, theoretically, we could do some level of poll timer to do this, but the poll itself is so long that it might actually cause issues. So your choice really is live with a single one, knowing that you'll take the less aggressive one with it, or potentially run more than one where possible, which has interesting bootstrapping issues for single hop, single session, because you're using the same endpoints to do your session demultiplexing. But if you can do that and you can support the extra session, then perhaps you're servicing both applications in the way they want to be.
Yeah, I think that's a great summary of the issues, and that's why I'm asking the question of the group, so to speak. Does the group actually want to support this? If so, then I think the model has to support it. If not, then we don't have this problem in the model.
Well, so
Greg Nursky.
sorry, let me just answer less first. So, I mean, if you have, it's not a, so the question back is, in this case, it's not a, what we discuss in the design team, it's not a common implementation. It's not a common behavior. We know of only one implementation. So that's why we're wondering if, you know, that's out there. The BFD RFCs does not prevent you from doing that, but there's one implementation. And supporting that in Yang model is fine, but if it makes the base model really problematic for most implementations which don't support that behavior, then, you know, it's a little bit of a problem. Sorry.
Yeah. Again, I think that the use case that's been described with a more or less aggressive or clients that are interested in more aggressive monitoring of the same path could be implementation specific. So it can be implemented outside of BFD.
So sorry, trying to take notes at the same time. So I agree with you. You know, we can basically choose to do one behavior or the other, but we do have the modeling issue in terms of, if we're going to say this is a supportable type thing, what do we do? I'm going to offer an example out of BGP data modeling from SNMP. There were cases of, you know, multiple BGP sessions between two endpoints as being in like one or two implementations across the entirety of the internet. But it massively made a mess out of the session table for BGP. The design choice was not to support it. Now, you're still able to cover portions of things, but you didn't get 100% coverage. So you do have a choice in front of you. If you can figure out how to model it, it's certainly a nice to have. But if it completely makes a mess of your key structure, it's probably not worth supporting as a primary use case. And unlike SNMP, as long as we're doing a good job about our groupings in terms of the contents of things, it's perfectly acceptable to have more than one container set modeling things, you know, one for the common case, one for the extended case with additional indices. Let's see, there was, the other comment I wanted to make was with regard to Lime. One of the interesting implications about Lime, aside from the keying stuff, you know, how to fit this into the CFM style model, is that Lime does imply common RPC type elements. So it is example, ping and trace router, effectively common elements in Lime. With async BFD, we don't really have either of those things. But when we start considering things in the context of SBFD, we have basically introduced ping. So comment to the design team is, you know, take a look at, you know, maybe the ping case for SBFD and see if it makes sense to include a RPC that is specific to support that. And I think that actually supports the Lime use case. The rest of it is obviously a lot of negotiation about what sort of keying stuff that Lime needs out of the design team. And I think that's going to be an ongoing thing. So I do have a question for Loa. Yes, Loa, you have to pay attention for a second. So obviously we do have people on the Yang design team that are active in MPLS as well and are taking care of your needs. do the MPLS chairs actually have sort of like an internal active work item to try to look at this work and make sure it's supporting you? I think you're sort of getting that service for free right now, but it might be worth active monitoring.
So Lou Anderson, MPLS working group chair. The question is a little bit tricky to answer. We are not doing anything coordinated at working group chairs at the moment, but I know that at least George and I are looking at it individually. So if this is a request that we should do something as working group chairs, we're certainly willing to do so.
Okay. Question is whether the MPLS chair should be actively tracking this. Okay. So I have one indirect question that is sort of raised by the RPC from Lyme stuff. Is there anybody in the room that has a BFD implementation that supports demand mode or demand mode BFD? Okay, that's why I thought it. To the best of my knowledge, having polled people before, nobody currently supports it. It's sort of one of the last orphan features in the base RFC. And this actually brings me to what was going to be an optional topic. We have 5 minutes left. I'm just going to mention it. BFD has been pretty darn stable for the last several years. Demand mode really is the only feature that is not pervasively supported. We now have support for the multi-point, which was referenced in the original document and is at this point in the publication stream. This means that we are capable of looking at taking BFD to full internet standard if we actually desire to do this. The work that is involved in taking something to full standard is basically an audit of all of the specifications in the set that we want to submit, which would probably be the core set of 5880 and up to 5885. The 5884 BIS document basically helps take care of some of the things we would have done there anyway. And it's basically about taking care of any errata, any features that we don't support, doing some implementation reports, making sure that we have stuff. I think BFD is mature enough that we could probably do this, but there is work involved here. It's going to require people that are willing to do some document auditing type activities. So my question to the working group, and this is one where you all can respond even if you don't intend to help, do you think that BFD should be considered to take to full internet standard? I see 0 hands. I suspect that there's maybe this would be interesting, but don't necessarily want to work on it. So I'll take the question to the mailing list, but please be thinking about this. We're at a point where we can cross the little boundary in the standards process. It does absolutely nothing for us besides create a little bit of work. But it is there are not a huge amount of protocols that have hit full standard, and I think it would be nice to actually go there. Sharam.
Sorry, Sharam, the very Broadcom. Now that you asked, I want to ask another question. Has anybody using the echo mode?
Yes, there are at least 2 implementations I'm aware of that use echo.
Echo.
Actually, would you mind in the back stating your vendor?
Hi, I'm Rick Taylor from, I'll start that again. Hi, I'm Rick Taylor from Airbus, and I use echo mode exclusively.
Excellent. I think, okay. So I think that concludes the business that we have scheduled. So I move that we adjourn. Thank you for your work. Let's take all the remaining stuff to the mailing list, and we will look at potentially meeting in Buenos Aires. Enjoy your lunches. So one last thing, blue sheets. Is there anybody who has not signed the blue sheet? No, I did not.
You are also working on the MD. Yes. I always ask you on the translation. Well, actually, working on